I want to come to what you're suggesting in a moment. What do you make of today's announcement, though, of this additional lump sum for those who've used up their 4 years of drought assistance?
Yeah, look, it's a really difficult time for those people. They've been on a welfare payment for 4 years. They can now, I think, be on it 4 years out of 10. And, you know, really during that time, it's been time to put food on the table, to provide basic sort of household assistance that they might need, whether it's kids at school or whatever it is. And also, I guess it's time for them to have a think about how their business is functioning, how their farm is functioning and what sort of capacity they have.
Do you agree with what the Minister's saying, that really at that point you do need to make that hard decision?
Well, I think people, it's hoped, and I don't know how many people we're talking about here. Certainly I know how many people are currently on farm household allowance, and that's not a huge amount of people when you compare it to the current farming population.
But how many have used up the 4 years?
Well, again, I don't even know that figure.
That comes to what you're talking about.
And that comes to what I'm talking about.
Labor's, however, saying today you should just pay it while ever they're in drought-declared areas. Would you go that far?
Well, I think you want to make sure that people have got time to make decisions and time to make choices. But I also think there needs to be, just as in any business, there is a time where people have to make some hard decisions.
So and you can't just pay it in perpetuity, even if they're in drought?
I don't know that you can pay it in perpetuity because we're talking about taxpayers' money. We don't do it for anybody else. Our farm is special. I'm not sure about that, and I'm not sure that the taxpayers think they are. I mean,
well, one of the arguments that I've heard on this is that they are, because if they leave the land and, you know, years later it is more productive, it's lost. That land itself plus the workforce.
There's also an argument that if they leave the land, someone else will buy it. We have record high agricultural land prices in Australia at the moment. And in actual fact, some of the families might be making the absolutely best decision to sell to their neighbour, to sell to somebody else, and no matter how hard it is. And let me be clear, because drought is a time when people are making tough decisions. So people are making decisions to sell their stock. People are making decisions to change their enterprise mix completely. People are making decisions to take jobs off farm.
And in your view, we need
making huge, difficult decisions. And this is just one more that comes as a result of drought.
And you need that sort of arbitrary deadline to force a decision.
I don't think you can give people support indefinitely, and that's the really difficult conversation to have. It's just, you know, drought brings on, it is a difficult time. A tough drought like this is particularly difficult, but what we know is that every 10 years or so we've had a drought, and it's very likely that every 10 years or so we're going to have another one. So we need to
this gets into the need to plan for the future. But just again on this one, how's this work? Is the government talking to you about, you know, we're thinking about this lump sum payment we're going to announce this morning? Do they run it past you?
They hadn't run that one past us, no.
Does that strike you as a little strange?
Well, I think it's much easier, and we would expect them to. I think it's, you know, it's much better if we can be prepared, and also if we can give them some advice on some of these issues. And, you know, we would hope that they would feel comfortable coming to us. We certainly give them advice. They don't always take it up, which is fine as well. But really, in this instance, every little bit will help. I'm sure these families will gratefully take the money. But by the same token, you know, it is good, I think, government... We're in uncharted waters here. We're in a place, one of the worst droughts in living memory. I hope it is the worst drought in living memory. You know, families across Australia are making incredibly difficult decisions at the moment, not just this one. And I think, you know, to paint it as any worse than having to sell all the breeding cows of an enterprise that's been in business for, you know, 80 or 90 years is not fair, because I think it's just the same level of difficulty.
Let's talk about your preferred approach here, or what you're calling on the government to do. It strikes me that you're talking about the need, and it seems a fairly sensible demand, to have much better understanding of where the money being spent is going, what we're getting for that money, you know, a much better understanding of to evaluate whether the drought assistance state and federal governments are providing is working.
Yeah. So at the moment, the system that we have and that we've always had in Australia is that it's largely reactive. And as drought, so when we finish this drought, which hopefully only around the corner, everybody will take a deep breath and forget about droughts until the next one. So nobody actually measures the efficacy of any of the programs that are on the ground. Nobody
Give us an example
shares
of that. Is farm household allowance one example of that?
Farm household allowance is one. So is it working? Is it actually encouraging people to make difficult decisions? Is it providing that important safety net allowing people to get back on their feet? We just don't know. What about freight and fodder subsidies? Is that actually helping the people who need help to keep their businesses going and make some of those tough decisions?
Or is it pushing up prices?
Or is it pushing up prices for others? So all of these measures, you know, the state has measures, but the current agreement we have is that the federal government does these sorts of things and they get on and do them in isolation of everybody else, just like, you know, today's announcement. The state government has agreements that they're going to do these things and they get on and do them in isolation of everybody else. Nobody talks to each other about them, and so nobody talks to industry about them.
How do you fix that? Should there be some sort of agency that sits over federal and state efforts on the drought and really can dig in and analyse what's working and what's not?
Something that we have to do is to think about drought every day, when we're in drought and when we're out of drought. And it has to involve all stakeholders. It's something that all stakeholders have to work together on.
But who can
not
do this?
just the federal government, not just the state government. I think there is a role for a COAG type body to organise industry, state stakeholders, federal stakeholders. We do need to have government in the room, but we also need to have industry, and don't forget community. So, you know, there's a lot of talk at the moment about farmers, but small businesses in some of these small affected towns are really not getting very much help at all. The guy that carts our cattle, the guy that carts our freight, you know, he's had to lay off all his workers and he's not really getting the same sorts of levels of support that we get, whether we're in drought or out of drought. And so, you know, this plan, the way that it's planning for drought and it's strategically organising drought, where everybody talks together, everybody knows and assesses what has been on the table, what needs to go on the table. And it changes from the reactive approach that we're in now, where government sees a hurdle, you know, we have these people coming on farm household allowance, what are we going to do? To a really proactive planned approach.
Which might help for the next drought. Right now, is there one thing you'd like the government to be doing that it's not?
I think the government is out there listening, which is incredibly important, but we think it needs to absolutely, and we appreciate the $7 billion that's on the table. There are a lot of people out there, however, that are not currently receiving any benefits. What I'd say and what we've said to government is that whatever they put out there now, really, they need to be thinking about trying to help more people if they're doing it. They need to make sure that their support...
You mean the communities?
Yes, I mean communities and the is more widely available. So some of the measures there now are really for, as they say, for safety net provisions. But the other thing to understand is that a lot of the things that people are asking for are actually agreed to be delivered by state governments. So, you know, we have this sort of line at the moment where, and this confusion about who's, you know, what do the state governments deliver? Everybody's asking, you know, Scott Morrison's government to deliver it. They're already putting $7 billion on the table. The state, where are the state governments? What are they doing? Nobody's talking to each other and we don't really know.
Let me ask you this, because just finally, there's been a lot of debate about this. Do you think the government has a drought strategy now?
So we've given them our drought policy, our national drought policy, which involves planning for future droughts. There's certainly a COAG drought agreement that we've referred to before. That's about as much as I think they've got at the moment.
So you wouldn't say they have a drought strategy?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think they do, but then that's not unlike any other government that's ever sat in Australian government since Federation. So I think they're, and I think it's, you know, unfortunately, at the moment the needle has stopped, and it's stopped here on Scott Morrison's government and also in our lap as well. And we are in uncharted waters without a plan. And David, we don't want to be here again. That's the main thing. We really want to make sure that now this government and the state governments can all commit to addressing drought in a different way, and we need a new way of working with drought because it's going to happen again and we don't want to be here again.